Th- Thanks very much, and Ms. Joseph, I really appreciate what you've shared here because it's reasonable and realistic in terms of talking about an energy future that is based on what the world needs. Not a pipe dream, not a fantasy, which I regret that quite often seems to be what bleeds from other political parties across the aisle. So I want to ask you very specifically when it comes to reducing global emissions, is there a case for Canadian LNG to be part of that solution?
Yes. So, because the world has been increasing its use of coal, and it's increasing its use of coal because it wants a high volume, low cost source of energy. The alternative to that has a lot of the same characteristics, but half the emissions, is natural gas. And LNG from Canada, which would be made with some of the highest methane, some of the highest emission mitigation. Many of the projects that are coming online are going to be electrified. So the lowest emission is how it's produced, going to displace these higher emitting fuels, which these countries continue to use. As I said, India has plans to double coal production by 2030, which is all for electricity generation. So that means major emissions increases, much more significant than Canada's emissions. And we have to look at what role can we play in that.
So the way that I see it is Canada can be left behind, and the world has the world's environment is worse off, or we can lead the world by making sure that we can get our energy to market. Now, I would ask, specifically when it comes to hydrogen, because I think there's this misnomer that it's hydrogen or natural gas. Can you comment on that it's not a binary thing, but it's hydrogen and natural gas? Could you comment on that quickly?
It's absolutely hydrogen and natural gas, and some of the first hydrogen that's going to come onto market and is starting to be developed in terms of projects, including in Alberta, are blue hydrogen projects that benefit from the carbon capture capacity and resource and geology, but then can be exported as ammonia. And that's an option that also exists, in the East. If people want to pursue it. And then, of course, in Eastern Canada, there's a lot of goals around green hydrogen, the use of wind to produce that. So there is no and or, because the goal is more. And what is going to fill that need for human access to affordable, reliable energy that countries are not compromising on.
And I appreciate that. And the goal is more, I think, is a great message that I hope my colleagues are listening to. And just one quick final question, and then I do hope to get to my friends at the Canadian cattle producers. Much of the tech associated with clean tech, green tech, however it is defined, is produced in jurisdictions with very poor environmental records. Are we accurately accounting for the emissions that go into the production of that technology? Just if you can, 10, 15 seconds. Sorry that it's short.
I don't think there's a lot of discussion about the supply chains and the environmental impacts, not just in terms of emissions, but in terms of water pollution, land, like the mining. There's a lot of environmental impacts associated with.
I hate to cut you off, but let's just leave it there and say more needs to be talked about. To my friends at the cattle producers, the WTO, other trade challenges, I just want to provide in the last minute or so, if you can talk about that, and specifically as a starting point for that, when the interim agreement with the UK was signed, one of your American counterparts, their comment to me was, y'all got screwed, at the same time when the Liberals were celebrating the ascension of this agreement. So I'm wondering if just in the last 60 seconds or so, if you can talk about some of the trade challenges that exist and the role that the WTO can play in terms of helping to mitigate some of those challenges within your sector, but if you can broaden it just about your knowledge more generally as well.
So as I said, we've utilized the WTO dispute settlement mechanism and have a precedent in one particular instance that we can and do reference when dealing with our trading relationship with really our largest partner. That's one scenario. Another scenario really is 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 really addressing some of these challenges, these non-tariff barriers, right up front. On initiation of these agreements, and working obviously very much in part with our trade negotiators to ensure that our concerns are being heard, and that we're really being represented in a fair agreement.